Good morning. Good morning. This is Mr. Johnson, uh, wanting to speak to you today briefly about a paradigm we use to understand three terms: political, economic, and social. Now, a paradigm is a way of looking at something for more understanding, a different way of looking at a thing, a perspective we take to try to understand it. So, when we say political, economic, and social, and we look at those three areas of life, PES, that becomes a paradigm for how we understand societies, civilizations, how they organize themselves. So, political, economic, social becomes the paradigm through which we'll look at some place, for example, like Mesopotamia or Egypt or the Roman Empire. And we will be using this paradigm, political, economic, social, all year during world history. So it helps us, if we can make it part of us, really understand this way of thinking, this way of looking at a society, it'll be very helpful. Matter of fact, today you want to pay close attention because you're going to get a chance to practice describing the political, economic, and social conditions in several of the early River Valley civilizations in the Fertile Crescent. So let's begin by talking about what's political. The political is the whole realm of power, is the question of who is in charge, who gets to make the rules. The political, uh, according to Schmidt, was the sovereign, the one who decides who the enemy is. Who are we going to fight tomorrow? Who's in? Who's out? What's the law going to be? How are we going to interpret the law here? What's the penalty going to be? The political is the part of is a part of a society that holds power and orders society by its power. Political has to do, of course, with government, with the Congress, with the Senate, with the president, and the U.S. with the three branches of government: executive, legislative, and judicial. And so, but government systems are something we'll be learning about all year. We've already looked at the theocracy that was Egypt, where the ruler of Egypt believed he was God, and so did the people. And we really very closely related to that is the government, the political way of organizing called a monarchy, where a king is in charge. But the king, that's very close to being uh, a theocracy because the king always claimed that God put him in charge. Oh, God made me in charge. I got all the power because God wants me to have. That's the idea of being the royal and the idea of divine right. So the area of the political. Okay. By the way, just to look at the exercise, mono means one, arche means to rule. So monarchy means one rule. Um, Theocracy, we keep coming back to this term. Theos means God, and of course, arche means rule. So theocracy means rule by God. So we begin to understand that the political realm is concerned with power, the administration of power. Who holds power? Who decides the enemy? Who decides who we're going to fight? Who's accepted? Who's in and who's out? Okay, let's talk about the economic. Economic is not too far separated from the political because the economic has to do with the with money, and money is power. We all recognize that to a degree. How does a society handle its economic life? That is, its life in trade, its life in work, how people make a living, how a country makes its budget, how we pay our bills, how we accrue wealth, how we save, how we invest, how we how we earn, and this the a political power very often has lost its power because it could not sustain a vital economy. An economy is how people make their way in the world, how they afford to live, and not just to live, but are does the economy of a certain place give a kind of lifestyle where people are satisfied with their life, where they're not going to come against the power, against the political power, and overthrow them because life is so terrible they can't stand it. So the economic side of things is the money side, and the economy of a civilization often drives the whole situation. Uh, let's look at the third in our paradigm. We looked at the political, looked at the economic. Now we'll talk about the social. Social gets to areas that are more involved with culture. Okay, culture is a word that we never get away from in study of world history or any history. Culture is everything that we receive from society, from our community, just by virtue of being born. We don't do anything to receive it. It's like the air that we breathe. You know, once we're little babies and we come begin to be alive, we breathe air, and along with that air, we hear a certain language, and that language is the language of our culture. That's why we don't speak primarily uh, Chechen here in Houston, right? We speak primarily English and primarily Spanish because these are the languages that we heard uh, as that the messages from our culture came to us in these languages. So we receive them. Our culture has, and we've talked about this before, brings us our diet, brings us our holidays, brings us the way we live, the way we organize our families, the way we organize our marriages, our relationships, the way we organize education. Certainly, religion is an aspect of culture. That's why we can say that we're pretty sure that there are no Sikhs, right? Sikhism is not really a big religion uh, in terms by percentage in Houston. It's largely going to be certain religions that came to us as a result of our culture. We may be Roman Catholic, we might be Baptist, we might be, but largely religion and our religious beliefs are also a function of culture in the same way. So we look at if we say, what about marriage? What about a wedding? Is a wedding What is a wedding? Is it political, economic, or is it social? Think about it. Right? Yeah, you're right. It's social, right? A wedding would be a social event. Um, art. Let's talk about art. The love of art. You. There are certain paintings that we love and things that we are attracted to artistically. Uh, of course, it's art is a social thing as well as music. You know, we say, well, this is the kind of music I like. But I think often we don't realize how much the music that we like is just a gift to us from our culture. If we were born in India, then we would just love Hindustani music. We would just that would be our jam, and we wouldn't the music that we enjoy now would sound strange to us. It's because of our culture. Same thing with food. Food is a very easy way to understand culture, right? If I say to you, "Ooh, I love Tibetan food. That's the best food in the world." Well, look, the students that are listening to me today have never even had Tibetan food, right? Because their culture didn't offer Tibetan food. So, what kinds of food do do we love? Well, I love some Mexican food. I love some Italian food. These are the kinds of food, Americanized to some degree, that my culture taught me to love. My culture fed this to me, so of course I think it's the best because it came to me from my culture. All these aspects of life would be called social. Okay, those aspects of life that are social that have to do with my relationships within the community and my relationship to the community in all these ways that involve culture. All this would be called social. Now we begin to see the paradigm fully, okay, in all three aspects: the political, the economic, and the social. And we begin to see that we can look at any civilization and just ask ourselves questions. Does it have to do with power? Does it have to do with money and trade? By the way, I guess I think I neglected to make it clear enough that money goes in, money goes out, and goods and services are traded. Right? People use money to buy and trade objects, and so all this the trade life of a country is part of its economy. And then thirdly, the social. What the interaction of families and individuals with their culture in so many ways. So this is a paradigm now that I want you to use when you begin to evaluate a civilization. And we're going to practice. You'll see in day 5, we begin to practice on some of these early river valley civilizations. Before I sign off, I want to come back to one other term that we've discussed, and that term is cultural diffusion. We're going to come back to it over and over again, because if one culture discovers something or begins to practice something that works for them, and that information is shared somehow with another culture who adopts that practice, and starts doing the same thing, or building the same thing, or doing something in the same way, that means that this idea of one group has diffused, or it's crossed the border and is now being practiced by some other group. That's cultural diffusion. It might be what we eat, might be the way we dress, it could be the way we organize our government. Okay. Cultural diffusion is also a term that's going to be part of the discussion here, along with the paradigm of political, economic, social. Please apply this when you go back to Schoology and you look at the brief readings that we have on the different cultures. I'm going to ask you to uh, summarize them and to evaluate their political, economic, and social. I want you to use that paradigm to evaluate these civilizations. Thank you very much. I'm available if you need me.